folks, and welcome to another Bloomz, Babble and Beyond. And it's the last one of 2023. And we have almost a full complement of Bloomz artists this morning. We are just waiting for our Australian counterpart, Cindy, to join us. And we will welcome her hopefully soon. And today, of course, as always, we have a topic for the chat. A big topic, I would think, because it's a topic that changes the more you think about it. It's changed over the years. And the topic is, what exactly is art? What is art? And we have 7 at the moment, very, very different artists joining us. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
What is art? Now, I thought I'd start off by giving a dictionary definition, which is really not worth it. The paper it's printed on. Art, according to the Oxford English Dictionary, is the expression or application of human creative skill and imagination, typically in a visual form, such as painting or sculpture, producing works to be appreciated primarily for their beauty or emotional power. So, yeah, I suppose that goes to some way to convey what art is.
I wouldn't disagree with it, put it that way.
No, it's much more than that. And I think we would agree that over the many centuries, what art is has changed. And I think it's changed from a global level as to what people consider to be art, but it's also changed for each individual's personal definition of what art is. Certainly for me, having joined the Bloomz over the last few years, the word art has changed for me. The definition of art has changed for me to include so many different things that I didn't consider art, including my own crafts and skills that I've been doing, making my lamps. I never really considered those to be art. So where do we start, folks? Where do we start with? Who wants to start us off with this huge topic of what is art? I mean, look, Sammy's desperate to go there. Go on.
Okay. All right. So for me, even though it may surprise some of you, for me, art is the way I communicate. I can express myself and exactly what I want to say, my thoughts, my feelings, everything when I'm creating my artwork. So even though I write and I can speak about it, for me, you get the whole of my what's going on inside my head on the canvas. So it's communication for me. But also what I like about it is also social commentary. So if we look back to when we were mark making on cave walls, it's always been telling a story.
Speak for yourself. You haven't seen my cave wall mark making.
But it's always been telling a story and sharing news.
Yeah.
And so it's always been about social commentary. So as beautiful as pieces of art are, whether it's a sculpture, painting, dance, music, poetry, for me there's always, you can allot it to a piece of time, so it's a timeline. That's for me.
I think if you were to stop 10-20 people in the street and ask them this question, what is art, unfortunately you would get a lot of people that have got this preconceived art is painting, and that is because they probably have.
It depends where they were brought up.
Yeah,
and
they haven't been exposed.
The artists, doesn't it? Because you're saying that you changed, but that's because you now are in a world with lots of artists, and so you actually perceive things very differently. Whereas previously, you found it difficult to call yourself an artist because you also had that perception, which is art's a thing that I go to a museum to see or an art gallery to see. It's not something that I would create at home, and that's where it's different. And for me, it was always, what's the difference between craft and art? Because and I think people still struggle with that one. And for me, I was thinking about it today because being a sculptor, and when I sculpt, I really do put my whole self into it. And of course, it's emotional and it's draining, and so you have to sort of go, oh, I'm going to stop now because that's too much. But then sometimes I will go and do what I consider to be craft, to relax at the moment, for instance, I am doing some macrame. Now, for me, I'm doing a craft version because I'm following somebody else's pattern. It's delightful, but I have just been following a lady who does macrame as art, and the pieces that she creates and the sculptures, I will call them as well, for her, it's art. So, you know, it's not, the medium doesn't denote whether it's an art or a craft. I think it's how you, whether you are, as Sammy said, she puts her emotions in, she's making a statement. And that's the same for me. When I'm creating my art, I'm doing that, as opposed to when I'm doing what I consider a craft, where I'm just I say just making something, but I'm creating something, but I'm doing it from a pattern and I'm doing it from enjoyment rather than putting my whole self. I might even be learning a new technique or something.
But when that macrame gets to the stage where you are putting your own little bits into it, as I know you will, you won't just follow someone else's pattern. You'll branch off at a tangent. Does that then become art for you?
No, you see, because I'm still doing it just for a bit of jolly. At what
point would it become art for you then?
I think if I then said, oh, I'm liking this, and now I want to create something, and I want to put an emotion into it, or what am I actually saying? There'll be something where I think I'm actually, it's communication again, isn't it, Sammy? It's coming to that, where I want to communicate something. Whether someone else gets that from my art, it's a whole different ballgame.
That's another part of the subject.
That's what I put into it, you know?
Because I mean, it's the I don't get it is what you hear from a lot of people when they're talking about different sorts of art. Oh, I don't get it. And that again is because the art probably hasn't been communicated to them in a way, or they haven't allowed themselves to be open to accept that piece.
I don't get everybody's art.
No,
that doesn't make it not art.
No,
it just means that I'm not necessarily on that level, you know, in their vibration or whatever. And I wouldn't diss it because of that. I would just say, you know, I don't really get that. That's not for me. And I just
wouldn't say it's not art, though, would you?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. No, I think that's the thing, isn't it? Where sometimes we make a judgment just because we don't understand something, rather than, well, actually, that doesn't mean anything at all. That just means you're not open to it. So, yeah.
I think with the art and craft, I mean, this question comes up with one of the groups that I belong to for our exhibitions. And for example, there was somebody a wood turner applied to exhibit, and beautifully executed work. He's got the skills there, but they were fairly standard sort of pieces. There'd be the same design, the same shape, maybe different wood, obviously, but absolutely beautifully crafted, but not going that extra step of putting the emotion in to develop it into something more that you could really call art. I mean, beautiful, as I say, beautiful pieces that you'd happily have in your home, but is it actually art? You know, it wasn't developing that and bringing something new to a bowl, or, you know, having a new shape that no one's done before, or you know, incorporating but not just a technique, because I think, you know, most of us can learn a technique, but it doesn't mean that we're creating art using it. We've mastered that technique, but it's when you go above and beyond, you know, most of us can make a cake or something, but the people that you see on television or whatever, you know, they create these amazing things that you don't even want to eat it. You wouldn't dare, because it looks so beautiful. You know, it's a work of art. It's not just a cake. And I think it's that sort of difference between mastering a technique and then taking it that step or two further and developing it into a piece of art, rather than
so we've got that elusive element now that we're trying to pin down, the elusive element of what makes that piece of normal woodwork into a piece of art. And again, it's something it's that sort of
that's the thing, isn't it? It's the question is, what is he trying to communicate? Was he inspired to do? And as you said, if it's the same bowl in different wood, you kind of think, well, I can imagine a sculpture of someone doing something the same and actually saying, you know, these woods represent something, and so you can imagine where somebody might have done that. But by the same token, if it really is just, oh no, here's a bowl, and you think, beautiful, and you know, I might want to have a piece like that, but yeah, it's still, to me, Yeah, interesting.
But there again, Marcel Duchamp, I think it was, a toilet, and said it was art. I mean, it has been designed by somebody. People obviously design them to try and make them look as attractive as one can make a toilet look attractive. And, you know, his point was, well, is this art? Can we appreciate it for its shapes? And that, okay, they're mass produced, but and so it's not a straightforward question. There are so many different interpretations.
You've got the peeled banana on the wall, you've got the Tracy Emin unmade bed. All these are stretching that concept of art, but for somebody it is art. Going back to your woodwork, Chubb, I want to just pursue something here. If he had made 3 pieces identical with 3 different woods, mounted them on a stand with something that linked them together, maybe a caption or something, do we then think, yes, that's what he's doing? Maybe it's, I don't know, going from one sort of wood to another. Does that then become different enough to be art? Because he's thought more about the story of these 3 pieces, the emotion he's put into them, why he's used those 3 different woods. There's a reason behind it. Is that what we're getting at?
It could be, and to some people they would say yes, that's art because he's thought about this. He's made, you know, 3 bowls that tell a story almost or something, and yet other people say, but they're still 3 bowls. They're different colours, but they're 3 bowls. It's a toilet system. It may come in a different colour. Is it art?
I think you'll get lots of people with that mindset, and sometimes I sort of think, is it because they didn't think of that first? You know, it's like when people say my 3-year-old could do that.
Yes,
brilliant. Encourage that then. But or another effect, they'll say, oh well, I could do that after a couple of pints. Yeah, but you didn't.
But you didn't.
You know, but you didn't. So I think there's always that thing where people feel with art. When we very first got together as the Bloomz, I think one of the conversations we had was that people feel silly if they ask a question. And that has always been our thing. There's no silly questions. Ask the questions. We'll give you an answer. If we can't give you an answer, we'll find the answer. But I think some people feel silly. So rather than feel silly, they'll rather just dismiss it. That's rubbish. That's not art. That's this, that's that. But when you go into conversation with them, it's because they just haven't had not the education but the exposure to all different types of arts.
It's like a defense mechanism, isn't it? Rather than feeling silly, I can put a barrier up and say that, you know, it's wrong, and therefore I don't have to actually understand it, rather than just thinking, as you say, if you haven't had that exposure. I mean, I still remember the first time when my friend Leslie said to me, what art do you like? And he took me around all these museums and art galleries in London. And I was like, oh God, you know, it was all really, really, I didn't like it. I thought it was all stuffy in my mind. And he was like, could you not appreciate? And I was like, well, no, because I don't particularly like it. I know it's art, but I don't particularly like it. And I can understand why these other people are appreciating it. I went into a bookshop, and that was the first time I saw a book of Georgia O'Keeffe's work, which is really colourful and everything. And I was like, oh, there you go. Now I get the emotion from that. But I also went to an exhibition of her work where I didn't get some of her stuff. But, you know, once again, it's fine. But that was when I then decided I was going to open myself up to a bit more and go to more art museums and things, and actually understand why that, even though it's not for me, I wouldn't want it on the wall because it's a bit dull. I like a bit of colour.
It all depends.
I appreciate what that, you know, and the technique and the time that it was. Also, sometimes it's like historical art, it's the time that it was done, isn't it? And the colour that was introduced, it might have been a brand new colour, which was just amazing that they might have used in that time.
But it's also emotion, isn't it? It's, the emotion that you're feeling, the state you're in at the time you're viewing that art. Huge difference. I mean, emotion in art is a big thing, and it's never more apparent than with the Italian artists. Is that right, Elisa? Because there's such a lot of emotion when you look at any of the Italian artists, and I include you in this. The emotion in your art is palpable. You can sort of feel it oozing out of the pieces you create. So what does art mean to you, Elisa?
Well, I wanted to close the previous topics related to art. I don't want to be the professor, okay? But when you talk about history, art history, and museums, an idea came to my mind, and everybody knows Michelangelo for the David, for the Universal Judgment, or how do you call that there? I don't know, but the powerful figures of the Sistine Chapel. But many people, including everybody maybe that didn't study art at school, doesn't really know that Michelangelo produced very ugly sculptures, ugly if we compare to the perfection of the shapes of his mature age when he got old. And I would love people who are following us to look for the Rondanini Pietà, which is a late sculpture by Michelangelo. And you will see that, there are two figures standing, and it's not like the Pietà where the Virgin Mary holds the Christ, the dead Christ, in her arms. And it is something very, unfinished. It's very raw. And you say, that is art, that is Michelangelo. Maybe he had, difficulty in sight or whatever. He couldn't manage, the tools to sculpt. And just to say that to understand some kind of art and some manifestation of art and going behind stereotypes requires culture, I think, but not that you have to study for years, but maybe a little bit of interest and curiosity to go beyond the first impression. And what Fiona said is very interesting for me. So Duchamp made the toilets, but we have a banana sticked on a wall, and is art? For me, no, but it's a provocation. So everything is welcome to open our horizons and minds. No? And for my opinion, for me, art is something that breaks the rules and tries to move the depth of our feelings, and that is true. And for me, it was a discovery of my broken dreams, because literally changed my life. I would have never thought that I could be involved in such a different perspective from what I was doing, and I still do as a full-time job. And it's a possibility to have a different look out in the world. That's why everybody, even if you don't really know what art is, then start just looking and being curious and browsing books and websites. We have got plenty of possibilities. In the past, it wasn't like that. So you could see art just only if you were able to travel. Even in Italy, Italian people really don't appreciate what they have. We have the largest inheritance of the UNESCO and whatever, and each single village has maybe 10 churches with wonderful masterpieces, but we don't know about it. No. We don't know about it. So the first step to answer this question is maybe, taking a look around and try to find the answer in the past, in our cultural inheritance.
So, yeah, I mean, slowly as we get this conversation going today, there's so much depth to this topic, isn't there? There's the emotion, to opening yourself up to viewing different concepts, to allowing yourself to accept that you might not get it initially. And I didn't get abstract art initially. It was Sammy that really introduced me to the concept of abstract art, and then all of a sudden something clicks. And I think if more people that say they don't get it allow themselves, as Steph alluded to earlier on, to ask questions of the artist. And that is the great thing about the Bloomz, is that people can ask questions of all our artists. And none, as Sammy said, none of them are silly questions. Then your appreciation of art is just manifested so much more. Now we've got 2 artists left here. I'm going to leave Matt till last because I know Matt can have some really interesting concepts to say, because Matt does different sorts of art, and so does Julie, because Julie has now gone from doing her encaustic wax. She brings that into her photography. So we've got 2 different types of art here, Julie. Now, people wouldn't always consider taking snaps with the camera art, but you've taken it to that level now where you're showing people how they can use their camera, their iPhone camera, to make not just nice photographs, but photographs that have been given a lot of thought to the layout, the aspects, and the art mode then starts to come to the front. So talk us through your different types of art and what your take on what is art from your 2 different mediums.
Okay, so yeah, in terms of the photography, the amount you know, you're scrolling through Instagram or wherever, and you see these photos, and you're like, oh, if you could just give that the tiniest bit of attention, you could take that from a, you know, just no thought to the overall kind of layout. And I just think, you know, making everything, just making us, you know, everything that you can a piece of art, really. But for me, it's really, it's a really intuitive thing. It's a feeling every single time, and it doesn't really matter if it's an encaustic piece of art or if it's a photograph, or if you can, well, as the others have said, it's the emotion. But for me, it's purely the feeling, and it actually relates to anything. It doesn't matter if it's a piece of sculpture or walking down the street or whatever it is. As long as I get that, and often I can't articulate it. It's just something about something. I just see it, and I'm like, oh, you know, and it's enough to stop you in your tracks and think about it. So that's what I try and get across in both in my artwork and my photography, but also that's what I appreciate in, and it could be anything from, you know, the way a town is laid out to a building to whatever, you know, it's just it's if it's enough to spark that intuitive, like, ooh, thing, then that's got me then at that point. So that's kind of where I think it comes from that. But the other thing I just wanted to say, actually, going back to Fiona's point about the craft, and Stephanie's as well, about the craft and versus art, I think you also kind of need to, the one thing I found that really hacked me off, frankly, when I first started sort of getting into the art world, but is how much that was just, if you were an artist, you were looked down upon if you were doing craft. Well, that's just craft, and that really got under my skin, because I think very often you need to go through that phase before you can then get to the art part. And for me, I just think there was a real divide, and I think that's one of the things that often the art world is kind of, you know, people are afraid to go into galleries, or they're afraid to kind of ask the questions, and I think that's often why. And I just think no matter what you're creating, it should be encouraged, whether that's a craft form. Okay, it might not be classed as what some people would interpret as art, but for me, I think you need to go through that. And as Elisa said, you know, not every piece that we create is a bloody masterpiece. We go through those moments, and you know, whether that's just bad art or whether it's craft or whatever, I think you need to go through that to get to the art part of it. So yeah, and then I just get that feeling, and I know if it's rubbish and I know if it's not right, but when I get to that point where it is right, I'm like, yeah, now I've got that feeling in. And so yeah, for me, that's what art is.
Intuition plays a huge part in
hugely,
our own,
yeah.
And also, I suppose we can see that, being artists ourselves, we can see that with other people's art. And Sammy said something interesting earlier on about, oh, I could do that after a couple of pints.
Yeah.
But they could try. I'm looking at the piece over Sammy's shoulder there, on as we look at it over the left. Someone would try that, and you can guarantee without 100% that there'd be something missing from the piece that they do. Because
yes, but the person who said that hasn't got it. They haven't looked at it and understood the emotion and everything it's in. So they're just looking at it going, I could put a bit of red on a
bit of red, a bit of colour there.
Which means they've missed the point of that, which is, but I was also going to say, Julie, when you're saying about, you know, when you've got it, you know you've got it and you've finished and you go, yes, lovely. But sometimes I find there's a piece that you're not quite happy with, but certainly when you're doing a show and you're putting your stuff, sometimes I take a piece I'm not completely happy with, and it's there, and you just think, well, I'd be interested, and it's always the first piece to go.
Yes.
So it's the one that someone goes, oh my God, and they tell you what it means to them. You think, that's clearly why I was meant to bring it.
Exactly, yeah.
Because it meant so much to that person that you just sort of go, oh, and I was done with it, and I wasn't sure of it, but somebody else got it, and you just think, good, brilliant, it lives a life with somebody else. But I still struggle with that one, because you go, oh, I'm just not quite happy with that, and I'm sure.
There's that line, isn't it? You're meant to create the art, not judge the art, or something.
Yes,
and then if it's meant to speak to somebody, then it will speak to that person. It might not, but you have to be part of that to put it out.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's interesting. I was looking at some. In fact, both Steph and I were watching a short clip. I think it was on one of the social media channels a few weeks back, because Julie made this point about art could be a new layout of a town. And we saw a clip from the 1970s, darling, when Stevenage was laid out, and this wonderful new town was laid out, and it was art inspired, you know, because it had got these fancy lampposts and a new bus shelter, and it was very art-led development. And we look at it as, I suppose,
I don't think Stevenage looks like that now. I've got
no, but, you know, the old sort of Morris Miners driver. But it was interesting that
it was a shopping centre, wasn't it? It was a big shopping centre.
Oh,
and
it was art inspired and art led shopping centre, and
everything around us is inspired from art. You know, everything has been created through art and design. It just has different titles.
Yes.
So if you design buildings, you're an architect, so you're up here. If you design the label for the latest baked bean can, you may be seen by others down here. All artists. All artists.
Yeah.
I think going back to Steph's point about taking something that she wasn't quite happy with to a show and it being the first thing to go, I've had that experience with paintings in an exhibition. I think, I'll put this one in as well, and think someone's bought it. Why? You know, but okay, good, thank you. But it does take us back to the old cliche, doesn't it, of art is in the eye of the beholder. What's art to somebody is not art to somebody else, you know, and I think that's such a good thing, because otherwise, if we all liked exactly the same, wouldn't it be as boring as heck? You know, we would all be producing the same work, we'd all have the same work on our walls, we'd all wear the same, because we'd all think the same thing was good.
I just think it's a different thing to say you don't like something, or you don't get, than to say that's rubbish. And that's the bit where you just hope that anybody who says that's rubbish, you go, could you just maybe go out and open your mind a bit more and go and look at something? And I hate to use the word educate, because that implies they're not educated, but actually go and learn a bit
more than educate.
You know, open yourself up to it, to at least say, oh, okay, you know, I even understand why you did that, but that's not for me. It's like, for me, you know, the Tracy Emin with the bed, and I think it's classed as an installation, isn't it, rather than that for me isn't my idea of art. But I understand, just that she explained what she did, and you understand, and as Elisa says about breaking rules and things like that, I mean, she's a rule breaker. She just loves to come in and get so some people in conversations just love to press the buttons, don't they? And it's the same,
and it's social commentary, and it gets you talking about it. It's social commentary. So we've established that art is, a lot of it is emotion, it's intuition, and it's experimentation, which is where we're going to go over to Matt now. All of those three things, if ever there was an artist amongst us that had all those three things going on, it's Matt. Matt, what is art in your book?
Oh, goodness. It's a very wide spectrum, and it takes in all of what you've said. But for me, art can be a child's scribbles. to doodling. Anything that is, I was going to say non-verbal, but it's not, because writing a play is a form of art.
Poetry.
Yeah, poetry.
Yeah.
Yeah. Writing a book, filmmaking, anything that is expressive. It also includes creativity. So, and creativity is creating something that is new for that person. So you could learn a craft, and it's like the times tables. You start off with a 2 times table, and as you get up in the increments, the numbers get bigger, up until when we learn at school.
Oh.
No, this is just Mark. This is just Mark.
12, 12 and 144, and correct me if I'm wrong, because the levels of art, depending on what is included, whether you're including concept, history, art, the context that you're making it in, whether you place a toilet out of a home into an art gallery. Because of its context, you see the context, you see them differently. So it's a new way of thinking. And Elisa mentioned breaking rules. Well, the avant-garde in any kind of creative adventure, whether that's filmmaking, whether that's visual art, whether that's dance, anything that's creative, is pushing those boundaries, is saying this is another way to look at this. And if we hadn't done that through our lives, we would not be able to create spaceships. We wouldn't have been able to create cars. And as Sammy says, everything we see from the clothes we wear, from how we decorate our clothes, to the the houses we live in, to the planning and architecture of the roads and motorways, infrastructure, all of that is created and could be included in the art spectrum, but it gets to different levels. And it's not just about craft, because I remember when I was in my first year, and I can be very, very, very detailed and pedantic. And I remember creating this reed, and I was so concerned with getting it right, but I spent too much of my time getting it right that I didn't take it any further, and I actually failed in that class. And it was the best lesson that I've ever made or had. Yeah, because I didn't take it further, I didn't push it. And I think it depends on the level of art that you're creating, no matter what that is. So it can start very humbly, but all of it to me is art.
Well, yeah. So, I mean, it's just we could carry on talking about this for hours.
Oh,
it's a shame that Cindy didn't join us, because there would have been another aspect that I'm sure that Cindy would have brought up.
She's just woken up.
She's just woken up, bless her.
Oh, don't worry about
it. I think with everything that Mac just said, we could almost sum up art as art is life.
Yes, absolutely. All of a sudden that what is art has now broadened with Mac's description to include everything around us. And that's important, I think, because if we can look around us every day and identify what we're seeing as not just the mundane, but look at it in a different eye, and maybe say, yeah, that is very art inspired. There's a bit of art going to that. And all of a sudden that then fills out our other gaps in our thoughts about what is art, because then we start to see other aspects of our life as being art. And there's one thing about art that none of us can deny, is that it is so much enjoyment out of finding out and appreciating it. That's whether it's sculpture, whether it's fine art, whether it's abstract art, whether it's photography, whether it's dance, poetry. Let's all decide now, all of you listening, to include so many different aspects of our life as being art. Ask questions, appreciate that you're not going to get everything immediately, but you might do eventually, and allow yourself to take on board the intuition of the artist, the emotion of the artist.
Cindy's here.
Oh, we're going to bring in Cindy just as I was wrapping it up. Oh, no.
We say hello, Chuck.
We cannot fail to bring in Cindy. You're there.
My apologies, everybody.
No.
Oh my God.
No.
Yeah.
Okay.
We've just done a sort of a rehearsal.
We're just saying that art is life, and life is Cindy turning up late.
Yeah, so you are a piece of art this morning.
Oh my God.
We've called you other things in the last 3/4 of an hour.
No,
I bet you did. I'm so sorry.
No.
No, don't worry, my darling. It's lovely to see you. It's lovely to see you.
Can't believe it.
We're in the middle of the night for
2
you. What time
alarms
is
as
it?
well. 2.
What time is it over there in Melbourne?
It's only 9:45 at night. Like 9:50 at night.
You've had a hard day, have you?
I have actually. I'm sorry.
Oh, bless you.
Today and yesterday been pretty full on, and so anyway.
Oh, don't worry.
I've been at the zoo yesterday. It was really hard work, and then while I was there, the education team asked if I could possibly come in again this morning because they were desperate, because they had over 500 students coming in independent schools, and no volunteers. So they only had the teacher group, not enough basically. So I said I'd come in. So I've spent all morning dealing with kids from special schools, which is 3 times as much work. Adorable as they are.
Hard work.
Yeah.
I came home, I was exhausted and thought, there's plenty of time. I can get like there was a good 3 hours for me to have a nice nap. I'm thinking 3 hours, that's a good nap.
That's a good nap. That's a good nap.
Exactly. Set my alarm. Yeah, nearly 5 hours later, I've actually woken up. Sorry about that.
You obviously needed it.
Sorry.
No, we have gone over in all our minds and all our different ideas as to what is art. We broadened it out to really, as Steph just said, it's life can be. Life is one big artistic piece, isn't it? If we take it from a real broad aspect. But you did mention something there, which I'm going to ask you about, because you mentioned special needs adults and children. How do you think their appreciation of art may differ from other people's? It's interesting. We haven't touched on that.
No.
I think their appreciation of life in general is different than other people's. So yeah, of course, their appreciation of art's going to be different. Like when I do that kind of work at the zoo, I have a canvas bag that I've painted Kalinda, which is the cheetah from the zoo, on. It's got her head on it. And I know all the kids love looking at it and pointing at it and, you know, talking about it and everything. So they obviously do appreciate art, but they just see things differently to us. Like, you know, we appreciate, I think, the more refined things about art a lot, like the beauty and everything in it and things like that. Whereas I think probably just like any kids, actually, not just special needs kids, they appreciate the simplicity of what it is more, rather than, you know, the refinements that a lot of us appreciate in art. Maybe
we could probably learn from that, couldn't we?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's actually really good for your soul to hang out with.
Absolutely. It's
with kids
funny.
like this.
I was just looking through photos this week because I've been sorting out my computer when I did some session with a group called Escape Arts here, and some of the pictures and various adults rather than children of different needs, and a couple of the ladies, in fact, a few of the ladies still say hello to me in town, Steve, don't they? And I saw this lovely lady, Christine, and she can't follow instructions, and she said to me at the start, I can't follow instructions and I've got to do some needle felting. So even if I sat with her and showed her, she could do it for a period of time and then couldn't, but she loved watching everybody else do it. She loved looking at all the creation. She was standing there, the picture was of hers with her creation that she got to, and of course, yeah, okay, it didn't look like the sample piece, but it didn't matter, you know, she created this hedgehog, and as far as she was concerned, it was fantastic. But she loved being a part of it. She loved being a part of the art. She loved watching other people, and she laughed at the other people who couldn't do things as well. And that was the whole thing, how enjoyable it was, that everybody enjoyed each other's limitations, as well as not just limitations, but they could see things differently than I could see. And sometimes they got to the emotion far quicker than I got to the emotion. And it was exhausting because I've never had so many parts of my personality out in one group. I came home and fell asleep for hours myself, so I can completely
absolutely.
So brilliant to be a part of their world.
Yeah,
we have here a community of people helping adult autistic kids, that are not kids anymore because they are maybe older than 20 years old, something like that. They are adults, so they can go to school, and it's very complicated for the family to manage all the day with them. So they go in a center where they do pottery. They learned how to fire the pottery, so they do pieces of art. They are artists as well.
Brilliant.
Fantastic.
Well, I think if we can let everybody know that art isn't a club that you have to attain membership to, that you have to get to a certain level before you can join.
No qualifications to get in.
No qualifications needed to be an artist, except love, enjoyment, and the ability to want to express yourself. Now, whether people like what you do, tough. If you like it, if you love it, it's art.
Yeah.
Regardless of the people, if you look at that piece, as Steph just said, the people that she dealt with, that she did some needle felting with, they looked at their little pieces. Obviously, some of it would have looked like roadkill. I don't know, but they love their pieces. Yeah. And who are we to say?
It only looked like roadkill to me. It didn't look like roadkill to them, and that's the point.
Yeah,
exactly.
You know?
My attempt at needle felt is like roadkill.
It was.
But you know, what qualifications have we got to say that that's not art?
That's
we haven't.
right. No.
Art is all around us, and in the brief moment you've joined us, Cindy, you've added so much to the conversation. Next time we do one of these, just come on for the last 5 minutes. Speak the rest of the time, it's fine.
My apologies to everybody again for my tardiness, but yeah,
no, it is what it is. I think we've been going for almost an hour now.
Yeah.
And if we stop before the hour's up, we don't be able to put it up to some platforms. But I did my closing spiel just as Cindy came. She stole my thunder earlier on, so I'll leave it at that. Thank you everybody for joining us. This is the last Bloomz Babble and Beyond for 2023, but that's not the last you'll hear of us. Keep following us all on social media, and you'll see what we're getting up to. And we'll be back in 2024 with a new season of Babble and Beyonds. I wish you all the compliments of the season, whatever you're doing in the next month or two. Hope you stay happy, stay safe, and love your art. And now when you go out the door in the morning, look around you, you'll find art in nature, in human endeavor, in different cultures, and in yourself. And embrace it and love it. Thank you everybody for joining today. It's been a pleasure having you all on board, and we'll see you all again very soon. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.